Hi, my name is Paulie and I'm an author. There are definitely times in our lives when we go through the valley of the shadow of death, as King David recorded in Psalm 23. But that same psalm tells us that though we go through that valley of the shadow of death, we shall fear no evil. One Sunday afternoon a few years back, we were just sitting at home, my husband and I and our children, and we had some guests who had come over, and we were relaxing and watching TV. And suddenly I realized that I couldn't see from one eye, from my left eye. Instead, what I was seeing was like a black film across my eye. So at first I thought maybe there's something wrong with the screen. But when I covered my right eye and looked through the left, I realized that the eye had an issue. I couldn't see through it, except for seeing that black film. So at the same time, I remembered that I had had a dream in the night, a very terrifying dream. And in this dream, I was in a dark place, a frightening place, and I heard a voice speak very threateningly to me, as a very malicious voice. And this voice pronounced a threat against my life, a threat against the purposes of God for my life. And when I remembered this dream, I realized that the sudden loss of sight in my eye was something to do with this dream, that I was in fact in the middle of a spiritual battle. This was the work of the enemy. So the evening came to an end, and our friends left, and our children went to bed. And I decided, instead of going to the hospital in the morning, I'd spend time with the Lord first, because this was a spiritual matter, to hear what He had to say. And so my husband left in the morning, and the children left, and I was left alone in the house. And I began to pray. And I prayed to the Lord, and I cried out to Him, and I said, look, I'm in the middle of this battle. I can't see. My eye has suddenly lost sight. What's going on? And the Lord spoke to my spirit during that prayer, and He said to me, this is going to be a journey. And what I understood from that is I was not going to get immediate healing. I was not going to get instant healing, but this was going to be a journey that I needed to take. So what I did then was I changed my prayer and I said, okay, Lord, if that is the case, then give me strength for whatever lies ahead. So I prayed that way that day on Monday. My husband came home in the evening, and I let him know what was happening, that I couldn't see from my eye, and what the Lord had said. And we agreed, okay, I need to see a doctor in the morning. So Tuesday morning came, and I went to see an eye doctor, an ophthalmologist, a lady doctor, and she begins to examine me. And at first she's friendly and relaxed, but the more she examines me, the more her face begins to change and the more worried she looks. So she did a test, and then she did another test. And then she said, you know what, I can't really make sense of what's going on. What I'll do is I'll send you to another doctor who is just in the same building but 2 floors beneath. And even though he's busy, I'll call him and let him know that he should expect you shortly. So she took her phone and she called this doctor, and lucky enough, he accepted to see me. So as I left her office and going down those two stairs to see this doctor, I continued to pray. And in fact, I was praying in tongues and just asking the Lord for strength, because I knew that this diagnosis was not going to be good. Already one doctor is seeming very worried indeed. So I get down to this doctor's office, and the secretary has already been informed. I wait a few minutes, and she lets me in to see this doctor. So he examines me in one machine, then he moves me to another machine, and every time he moves me, he looks even more worried. So after a while, he tells me, you know what, I can't also make sense of what's going on, but my colleague is a little more experienced in this. His diary is full, but if you can be here first thing in the morning and be the first patient of the day, I will make a note for him to see you. And so he does that, and I go home. And that night, I have a very restless night, full of nightmares, and it's so uncomfortable. I'm worried and anxious, but I can also sense that there's a spiritual battle going on. So in the morning, I wake up, and sure enough, I'm the first patient, and I'm able to see this doctor. But as soon as he walks into his office, I recognize him. This is somebody I have known from when we were in high school. Though we were in different schools, we knew each other. So he begins to examine me, and we chit chat about our high school days, and we laugh a little bit. And in the process, I even discover that he's a believer like myself. So as he examines me, he says, I also can't tell what's going on. I'll take some tests and I'll send them abroad for analysis. Actually, he does 17 tests, and 12 will be sent to South Africa and 5 to the UK. And he tells me, once these tests come in, then you can come and see me, and they should be ready by Saturday. So I leave his office, and the next 3 days, that is Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, the eye continues to get worse. The black film in the left eye becomes even darker and darker. And in fact, by the end of the week, the difference between the sight in my left eye and my right eye is so huge that I also almost feel like I'm losing my balance when I'm trying to walk. In fact, I consider getting an eye patch, like the ones of the pirates that we see on TV, an eye patch to cover the left eye so that I'm not so uncomfortable. So Saturday morning comes, and I go back to his office, and for sure the tests have come in, but he tells me I have the test with me, but I really, even with these tests, there's no diagnosis that I can really give you. I can't tell what's going on. But even with that, he takes a pen and he begins to write a prescription. But because I can see he's so hesitant, um, I tell him, you know what, if this medicine that you're prescribing is not going to heal, it's really just experimental, let's do without it. And when I tell him this, he looks relieved because he tells me actually this medicine would just have taken care of the symptoms, but it would not have brought about any solution to the problem. So he tells me, if you're willing to trust the Lord in this matter, so am I. And we put our hands together, and he begins to pray over me. He prays over the eye, he prays over the issue, he prays about the spiritual battle that I'm going through, and he pleads with the Lord to take over because this is really more of a spiritual matter. And by the time he finishes praying, the issue is still there. I'm not healed, but I really sense the presence of the Lord. And a certain peace just takes over, actually, the two of us. And as I live there at the end of that appointment, my heart is even beginning to feel lighter. Now, in the next few days, the black film begins to reduce, but it takes a whole year and a half before it fades away completely and my eyesight is restored. You know, as I reflect on these incidents, it just occurs to me that indeed we do go through the valley of the shadow of death. But like the psalmist said, we must fear no evil because indeed the Lord is there with us. In fact, the psalm continues to say that your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I can tell you during that 1.5 years that my eye took to recover, that my vision took to come back, I felt that the Lord was there with me. It's not just that time when He spoke to me and told me it would be a journey and then He disappeared. He stayed with me throughout that time, and I really, really felt His presence throughout. And so, as we go through that valley of the shadow of death, as the psalmist tells us, King David himself, we should fear no evil because the Lord is with us, and His rod and His staff will comfort us.